Hello, dear friends, and welcome. Today we will carry on with the teachings, discussing the teachings of Thomas A. Kempis, and we'll be talking about the chapter 4 in the book 1 from the Imitation of Christ, and it is called On Prudence in Our Actions. So there is a difference, of course, between thought and action, and we would understand it from our life. So the way the mind works, it throws many thoughts at us every day, really, about many things, past things, present things, things from situations in life. Then we can have thoughts about some practical things that we need to do and planning and so on and so forth, really myriad different thoughts. But there are only a certain number of thoughts that we will actually entertain and take them and go with them, if you see what I mean, and consider things because we consider them important, like, let's say, a project we're going to do tomorrow, or something about our family, or something about our work, important things. But there's a very big difference between having a thought and considering a thought on the one hand, and then action, real action after that, because only those thoughts that we consider important will action upon, and to actually to go from one to the other, it always requires careful consideration, of course. So prudence in our actions is really, really important. But in particular, if somebody comes from the outside, let's say, and gives us a story or a thought, passes on to us, that we need to consider and then respond appropriately to it, it can be quite difficult, because the thought could be inflammatory and the story that we hear could be inflammatory and stuff, and about something very juicy that happened to somebody and whatever, gossip, or and that requires even more careful consideration. So he's teaching us how to be prudent in our actions, so which means being sensible, being cautious, being circumspect, take our time, being wise, being intelligent in how we deal with things, being judicious and shrewd, and so on and so forth. So great bit of advice for us. It's a short passage, only one little page in this beautiful book, but it packs a punch, and it's really, really interesting, and I hope you'll find it of interest. So, as ever, I will read bits of it and then I will comment on it. So, hope you enjoy it. As ever, I use The Imitation of Christ, translation by Stephen McKenna, and issued by Watkins Publishing. It's my favorite translation. So, chapter 4, On Prudence in Our Actions. I quote, "We must not put faith in every word we hear, or follow our impulses, but should cautiously and calmly weigh the matter in the sight of God. So imperfect, alas, are we, that we are often more inclined to believe and report evil of others than good. But perfect men do not too easily believe every babbler, for they know the weaknesses of human nature, so prone to evil, and especially so apt to sin in speech." So this is the first half of the chapter, and if we start looking into what he's saying here, he first tells us a few general big truths, which is do not put faith in everything you hear. So whatever we hear, we should not implicitly trust it, So don't think it's necessarily true, and that's really I can just trust it 100%. No, make space, take it, but do not rush in making conclusions. He also advises us after that we should not be emotionally reactive, you see, to that. So we need to remain calm, essentially. We need to remain calm. He says, do not follow your impulses. And an impulse, once we've heard the story, let's say a bit of gossip from somebody that came to us and said some story that is like inflammatory maybe, we should not follow the impulse, for example, that comes up, oh, I'm going to go and do this as a result of hearing that, because we should not be trusting it, and we should not be reacting to it to start with. But we should cautiously and calmly, he says, weigh the matter in the sight of God, you see. So you see how he says cautiously and calmly, all right? Weigh the whole matter. I see weigh is an interesting word because it speaks about, weighing things up, is, on which side it is. It's justice is weighed, so weigh it very, very intelligently, calmly, cautiously in the sight of God, you see. So not just from your own perspective, like, well, I'm Mario and this is what I think this is happening here. No, you should try to raise your mind to, it's almost like raise your perspective, as if trying to meet higher perspective, maybe perspective of God, or if you cannot do that, if we can't do that, maybe of a great master like the Christ, and think like we are weighing the matter in front of him and how he would think about it, and so on and so forth. And that immediately brings a higher and more beautiful, more spacious, calmer, and obviously far more truthful perspective, if we can embrace it. And then he carries on speaking that we as human beings are very actually imperfect. And I understand that today, we have a lot of teachings given to us in different ways through all the myriads of medias that we have at our disposal, that we can just go and do whatever we want, that we're great and what have you. There can be many teachings, not all of them are like that, but certainly people are not encouraged to be careful very much. It's more like, as I said, just like Nike, just do it. And with Thomas Kempis and any good religious man would say, just calm down first. Don't just do it. You're very imperfect. You and I are very imperfect. We have faults. There's nothing wrong with that from a certain point of view. Everybody has them, but our job on this earth, big job, is to try to perfect ourselves, to try to learn something of wisdom, of depth, of beauty, and so on. And particularly in our action, any shortcomings will very quickly backfire on us. So we need to be very careful when we act. So he says we are so imperfect that actually we're really very prone to believe and then pass on, let's say, a story, if it's of negative nature, a gossipy story about somebody, then there is a report, something negative. We're quite prone of doing that, but maybe not you necessarily, maybe, but what I'm saying is, as human beings are, we are prone to that. And you will see that also in newspapers and magazines and so on, and television. If there's a negative story, it'll generate a lot of interest. People like that. If it's a positive story, like, hey, the weather is beautiful and it's all gonna work out, and people, don't pay much attention to that. So we have to be very careful not to believe and not to pass on sort of negative thoughts, negative stories, negative gossip, and so on and so forth. And after that, he says that perfect men do not easily believe a babbler. You see, somebody who babbles is somebody who speaks without control, not intelligently, but maybe chaotically, and certainly not with any sort of any sort of reasonable way. It can be emotional and just blubbering on about things. And so perfect men, what he would consider perfect men, so let's say men of height and intelligence and wisdom and so on and so forth, who have learned these lessons in their lives, they don't believe every babbler, and they're just going to step back and not go into it and believe them. Because why? Because they know the weaknesses of human nature. So prone to evil, you see, he says. How can you say that, so prone to evil? Evil is a strong word. But if you take evil as bad, we're prone to, enjoying doing bad things, even in small matters, seemingly small matters, such as, Chinese whispers and gossip and stories that came to us, or somebody told us something. And we are especially apt, again, to sin in speech. Sin in speech is something that is really very important. I would encourage all of us to to really think about it. I've had to think about it quite a bit because speech is so important, and the way we communicate, what we say, how we say it, it all has a lot of power, and we can sin in speech by saying something in an inflammatory, unnecessarily inflammatory way, or in a negative way, and so on and so forth. So it's a great lesson. So he's teaching us here caution, not being hasty, not rushing, be circumspect, be wise, be honest with yourself and judicious, and so on and so forth. And do not trust everybody. Do not go ahead. Do not trust your emotional impulses immediately and all of that. Just allow space, and you will do well if you do that. In the part 2 of this chapter, he says, "It is wise not to be too hasty in what we have to do, nor to be obstinate in standing to our own opinions. In the same way, we ought not to be ready to believe the stories of every tale-bearer, nor immediately tell others everything that we have heard or fancied." Very important. So never be hasty in what you have to do. So always allow time, and rather do it slower than quicker. But also, don't be obstinate. Obstinate means basically stubbornly adhering to my own opinion in the face of potentially something that requires from me actually to change my opinion. But because it's my opinion, I stubbornly adhere to it. So he says, don't be hasty, don't rush into things, in actions, in thought. But also, don't be obstinate, because sometimes you need to change. So it's not either one or the other. It's you need to have both, and you need to, if you need to change your mind, do. It's important. But in the same way, we shouldn't again believe stories of every tale-bearer or babbler, as you call it, but not necessarily babbler. And don't just say to others everything you've heard and everything you like about a story potentially, or anything you fancy. Just don't. So he's just saying, look, if it's come to you, calm down, keep it for yourself, and consider it calmly in the sight of God. And in the last bit he says, often take the advice of a prudent and conscientious man, and prefer to be instructed by a wise mind rather than to follow your own ideas. For a good life makes a man wise and able to guide you in many things according to the will of God. So here he introduces a wise man, a wise person, a conscientious, a prudent and intelligent and a wise friend perhaps, or a teacher or a guide or a father or somebody in your family, whoever that is, that one can speak to about these matters and ask for advice. And this is a very intelligent thing to do, because there are times where we ourselves cannot, we get so maybe emotionally affected by the story somebody's told us, which is negative and problematic, and we're prone to, we just feel we're going to kind of lose it and tell it to somebody and create an even bigger kind of tornado maybe. And if we can't control ourselves, it is very wise, it is very intelligent to ask for help from a good friend, from a solid spiritual, but above all wise friend, cautious, judicious, conscientious friend, or a teacher, who can then calmly, of course, with wisdom, consider the matter with us and give us advice of what to do. Because sometimes we don't know the way forward, but to be aware that, we don't know the way forward and we need to ask for help is actually awareness. You are actually aware of what your shortcoming is in this situation, and you ask for a friend. So it's not about working it all by ourselves in the sight of God. Sometimes we can't do that. So then ask for help. And I would dare to say that it's actually more important somehow from my own life and from the life of people around me and people that I've known in my life. It's more important for us men to have a good, conscientious, intelligent, wise friend to help us, because somehow we seem to need it more. Sometimes because we're more prone to aloneness and to live sort of as an island, and which is, I think, part of our nature, how we are. There's nothing wrong with it. But, we might have more of a strong independent streak and sort of, I will deal with this. But intelligent man knows that you need a wise guide. And part of the reason why I'm studying with you at Thomas Campus is because I consider him a very wise guide, you see. So we can all learn from this wonderful advice. So, because women somehow seem to be more networked. A woman is always in a network, more or less, and somehow through that network she's got access to friends and to maybe madrinas, maybe older ladies who will be able to offer them advice more easily and than for us men. So just an encouragement, if you're a man, do not be shy to find yourself in your life a good and solid advisor and a trusted guide to help you, a spiritual friend really, or a teacher if you want, if you're so inclined. Yeah. So, and then your intelligence is shown through your preference to be instructed by a wise mind, rather than to be guided by your own ideas, when you see that your ideas actually could lead you astray. So this is really, really important. And so when you follow ideas and advice of a wise man, you see, when you follow his take on the situation, his understanding, and you do accordingly, you follow that and you do that as an action, you will most likely see a very positive result at the end of it. And that teaches you wisdom because you witness his conduct. And you follow that conduct, you saw what happened, so now you know. So next time you'll be hopefully much more able to do it yourself if your friend weren't available. Because the idea is not to have a guide for all things and forever in life, but as we are learning, in particular when we are young, oh my God, yeah, absolutely for sure. For a good life makes a man wise and able to guide you in many things according to the will of God. You see, a good life that he has lived has made him wise, so he's able to guide you according to the will of God in the highest possible way in any situation, and rather than you just marching in and sort of into a situation and making a mistake that would backfire on you and so on and so forth. The very last sentence is, the more humble a man is in himself and submissive to God, the more prudent and dispassionate will his judgment be in all affairs. So we're coming back to the subject of humility. And as I said, in Christianity, in a Christian path, true Christian path, humility is, humility, patience, these are the highest virtues, in a certain way. And he is emphasizing, if you're humble and if you are submissive to God, so, your pride levels are not very negative pride, negative pride meaning, well, I'm Peter and I know what life is and what are you going to say to me and da-da-da. That is not the right attitude to have. But being humble, that doesn't mean being weak. Very different thing. Humble and weak are two different things, totally. And only truly a humble man is a strong man, you see. But it's not easy sometimes to see that for us. So humility, submissiveness to God, meaning, you understand that you are not the beginning and the end of this world, that you're not God on earth, and that you have your faults and you have your issues, and that you should just find your reality, who you really are, where you're at, and live from that position, always aware that there are more intelligent, better people, kinder people, more beautiful people, spiritual more people than you and I, and that's just life, it's not, there's nothing wrong about it. So if we have that type of inner disposition, humility and submissiveness to God, well, in that case, he tells us, the more we have that, the more prudent and dispassionate our judgment will be in all affairs. Dispassionate meaning it will not be ruled by emotions, you see. Because a lot of people, and today in particular, as the times have spiritually gone down so much, and our lives are being degraded on a sort of daily basis, by the forces of Anyway, that's a whole other story. But people are encouraged to react emotionally. They get hooked into any emotional agenda that is going on, and to really give their energy, very important energy, emotions, and fire to this particular cause or this particular thing, without thinking it through very deeply. Thinking things through is becoming something that a normal human being is discouraged from doing. We should just be it's all about being more mindless, more forgetful, more lost, really, and in that finding some type of superficial joy and so on. There's really a lot to be kind of unpacked there, but here the great master teaches us, the more humble you are, the more you'll be able to be dispassionate, the more you'll be able to be cautious and calm and prudent in assessing what needs to happen and acting upon it in a proper way. And that will bring no end of blessings to your life, no end of blessings, and stop all sorts of possible troubles coming your way as a result of you not thinking things through and running with some story that you might have heard, and creating chaos somewhere else and so on. So prudence in all our actions is so well advised, and Thomas Kempis teaches us about that in a beautiful way. So I hope you enjoyed chapter number 4 from the book 1 of the Imitation of Christ. I hope you can see the way I can see, and I've seen for all these years, just how smart and deep this man is. Doesn't matter if he's alive or not. It doesn't matter whether his body is in this world at all, and this is known across any really discipline in life. A great master shines. He's timeless. He shines throughout centuries, and his sage advice is always pure and clean and very high, and so useful to us if we want to live a good life. You see, a good life. I send you much love and blessings from sunny Eastern Croatia today. I hope to see you again. God bless, and thank you.